Hi, Jim. This is Jason, your instructor here in your POL 310 class, and I wanted to give you a video response to your discussion post because, well, I think that this climate change unit and this climate change discussion is really kind of one that we could talk a lot about. So I'm hoping that this gives you a little bit of you know, insight into the issue and some of the policies that surround it. So in this discussion forum, we were supposed to look at one of those reports, and you had the IPCC report, which is basically a bunch of facts regarding climate change and some of the stuff that you talk about, rising sea levels and warming of the oceans, are some issues that really have people concerned, especially warming of the oceans, because it comes with a whole host of environmental problems like increased severity of storms and storm surges, and there's a potential for hurting biodiversity because when the temperature of the ocean changes, it affects sea life. And life on land is really largely dependent on how things go in the ocean. So you can see that, yeah, it's definitely a problem if the oceans are warming up and sea level is rising because, sea level rise is associated with certain areas along the coast and island nations going underwater, which could be kind of a big problem. So, I mean, the report it just kind of outlines those things, and then we're leaving you to think about policy recommendations from three different perspectives. So, some of the things that you're talking about here, renewable energy and low emission transportation and building efficiency are really important mitigation strategies because we need to somehow reduce the amount of our carbon footprint in order to slow down the rate of climate change. And the things that this global opportunity document talks about are all really good recommendations for the mitigation of climate change, but they're all going to be really dependent on the political climate of the different nations in the world. It's not just in the U.S. Like investing $1 trillion in clean energy, raising efficiency standards. Both of those things are really difficult from a political perspective because investing $1 trillion is going to require federal funding. That's sort of the the idea there. And raising efficiency standards is also done through policy, either through state or federal governments. So those things are good ideas, but we kind of have to ask ourselves, is this really possible given the political climate in the United States? And is this possible given the political climate around the world? So, I mean, it really seems like in a perfect world, we would just do all of these things and we would reduce, the effects of climate change, and we'd mitigate the amount of carbon that's going into the atmosphere and other greenhouse gases that are causing problem. But we really run into an issue of different nations being unwilling to mitigate the effects of climate change by using these strategies because it's going to hurt economic development, or investing like $1 trillion into technologies for renewable energy isn't actually possible in the developing world. For the most part, the developing world is having enough trouble just maintaining its infrastructure and creating enough food to feed its people and do that sort of thing. So if you think about the United States, yeah, hey, sounds great. We should do this. But, politicians are unlikely to make any moves that are going to hurt their constituents, which in the United States include a lot of people that are working in the oil, gas, and coal industries. And then you take another country outside of the U.S. that's relatively poor. Do they have the resources to invest in mitigation for, climate change when India and China are using coal to drive their economies? I mean, this is a really important and tough question. So, thinking about what these facts mean from the IPCC report, it's kind of, one step is at least we have to try to acknowledge the problem and get a sense of what it means scientifically. But then political action has to take place, and if it doesn't take place, we're really going to be in kind of a lot of trouble. So some of the other things that you were asked to look at were adaptation and sustainable development. I mean, sustainable development is great, and everybody should be developing sustainably. But again, third world countries just don't have the resources to do that on a large scale, and they don't have the know-how. You really have to be educated as to what are sustainable development strategies, and then the other thing is, well, okay, so let's just say that we're unable to mitigate the effects of climate change, and sustainable development is moving at a slow pace. Well, if you are in charge of a state or city or county or a country, you're just going to have to, at this point, based on the evidence, come up with adaptation strategies. It's just going to happen. We're going to have to deal with increasingly powerful storms. So what does that actually mean? Well, that probably means a lot of investment in the management of natural disasters. And that's kind of one thing that we see here in the United States. After Hurricane Katrina, there's been a big push towards becoming ready and capable of dealing with these natural disasters that are almost certainly going to happen. So those are sort of my thoughts on your post and where we stand with climate change. If you have any questions, be sure to post those here in the discussion, and I'll try to address them before the week is over. Thanks.